Thank you very much. I'll take from the three presentations. I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I will start by saying that, starting with Mr. Nose, uh, he spoke to us about the future of alternative fuels, in particular green hydrogen and green ammonia. I'll be very honest. I always looked at this as future fuels. I never thought that I'll see their realization in my professional life. But today, I actually do believe that it is possible that the cliche that we hear all along, that Africa could actually leapfrog the high polluting, the fossil fuel, could actually be possible. I'm very encouraged in particular and excited by the fact that come 2028, it will be possible, for example, to decarbonize 50% of the coal in power plants. So I think this is a huge step, because all along, for those people who I've interacted with, I've always thought that for a country like South Africa with 44,000 megawatts of coal plant, I've always anticipated that the transition will be from coal to gas, then to green hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives such as ammonia. But based on Mr. Nosa's presentation, I think that timeline might be sooner, and therefore it's huge. And why I say this and think it is a possibility for Africa is because Africa, number one, has the size of the land and has incredible renewable energy sources. Mr. Shimoda-san, you've actually said that Africa has 60% of the global solar, the best 60% of the best solar potential globally, and we've only harnessed less than 1%. We also have about 350 gigawatts of hydroelectric potential. We've only harnessed less than 7%. Of course, I know Japanese are very strong on geothermal. We have about 45 gigawatts of geothermal potential. We've not harnessed much of it either. I think it's only in Kenya, and we've only done about 1,000 megawatts. It's less than 2%. Then, of course, we have about 115 gigawatts of wind potential. Again, not much has been harnessed. The bottom line is there's huge potential on the continent, and therefore, I see that Africa is going to be the place to invest as far as renewables are concerned. And in actual fact, based on recent discussions, I see already that Africa is going to solve Europe's energy problems, because there are a number of interconnections that are going to be built in Northern Africa, connecting Northern Africa with Europe, to try and help Europe diversify its energy sources. Rather than relying on gas, they will actually be importing power and the molecules, in other words, hydrogen and also ammonia molecules into Europe. But I think I'm very happy with what Mr. Nose-san has actually presented today. Very encouraging. And then also based on today's presentation, I think I also would like to indicate that we would be very keen to actually participate in projects that involve this decarbonization process on the continent. It is part of our 10-year strategy to look at these new alternative fuels, and therefore we'll be more than happy to engage at your earliest, as soon as you have viable projects that we'll be looking at. And for JBIC, I think Mr. Amano, here I think the key thing is we are looking for core investments. I think we would be happy to hold your hand if you are looking at co-investing in Africa and work together. And then I think I must emphasize or reiterate what Chipidi has mentioned. Here, there are significant opportunities for investment by Japanese companies I think that we said we need to be made with Japan here with Africa 50. This is an entity, I think she said it very quickly, is an entity that is owned by African, and it has the trust of African countries. and therefore also familiar with the investment climate in Africa and can assist in navigating the political landscape and therefore reduce the risk, which, as Professor Urama already said, is significantly, is actually lower than what we normally expect. I think I'll stop there for the time being in terms of commenting on the panel for today. Thank you very much. I think my work has been slightly made easier because there was a report that came last week that shows that Africa's energy investment this year in 2024 will be about $110 billion this year alone, of which $40 billion will be for renewable energy. And the projection is that by 2030, Africa's investments will be $240 billion, of which about $80 to $100 billion will be renewable energy investments. The answer to your question is, and then of course there is the issue of battery energy storage systems and transmission systems. So I do believe that overall there is significant investments. And when it comes to some of these technologies, we all know that Japan is famed for quality infrastructure. And that is what we require in order to ensure the sustainability of our infrastructure. So the simple answer is that I do believe that there's huge potential for investing with Japan in renewable energy on the African continent. And I think, and that's purely for the period up to 2030. But just also to emphasize that at last year's Africa Climate Summit, Africa committed to increase its amount of renewable generation from 56 gigawatts to 300 gigawatts, which is actually even more ambitious than what was called for in the UAE declaration at COP28, which is to triple. But if you work out the sums, Africa is saying we are more than happy to quintuple, multiply by 5 times our renewable energy potential. And I think this is an area that Japan would do very well in investing in this particular area. Number one, because when you are looking at what you call infrastructural deficit, it is the highest anywhere in the world. So if you want to grow your revenues and sales for Japanese companies, the place to invest is in Africa. And we are looking forward to investing in Africa's renewable energy with Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand, the Chinese companies or, the European company like Germany has already, exploding their energy businesses in Africa. So I really hope, the Japanese company is also, enough competitive. So one more question. So what support can African Development Bank make to create the ecosystem of investors? So especially from Japan to promote successful green transition? What can you do?
I think here, this is what we do best. And I say we do best because our focus as the Africa Development Bank is to try and de-risk investments to make private sector investment viable. And I'll give you very simple examples. Last year, in 2023, we had a situation whereby 2 very important projects, one of which is Komombo in Egypt, 200 megawatts, and Komombo in Egypt, in 200 megawatts, and another one called Kariuki in Tunisia, 100 megawatts of solar. Both were about to unravel amid escalating EPC prices. But one of our facilities that we have called SEFA was able to provide reimbursable grants that enable those 2 projects to get to financial close. So that's number one. We have facilities within the bank to try and de-risk these projects. The second one is that we carry out in a consistent manner what we call policy advocacy in order to create the enabling environment that will facilitate these investments. And here, what we are looking at, we're looking at the legal and regulatory framework. And as talking of regulatory framework, at a bank, we created what we call the Energy Regulatory Index, which is an index that is used to ensure or to help countries develop or what you call world-class or best-in-class regulatory systems. And we've already achieved that in a number of, out of 43 out of 54 countries. So it's something that we are working on. And this is important because for investors will tell you that regulatory risk actually drives investment risk. So I think it's very, very important. And finally, I think you heard from Shepidi, this is the issue of trying to address the bankability of projects. We are developing the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa in order to ensure that we have a bankable pipeline, a pipeline of bankable projects to, and therefore be able to attract private investments. But I want to to comment on an area that Japan has a significant competitive advantage. And this is in geothermal. I think I said Africa has about a potential about 45 gigawatts of geothermal potential. And the country that has developed the most of the geothermal potential is the country I come from, Kenya. Kenya has developed about 1,000 megawatts of geothermal potential. And listen to this, 90% of all the turbines in Kenya are made in Japan. Starting with Mitsubishi, which brought the first turbines in 1981. Then it was followed by Toshiba. And then recently we have Fuji. So I think all I would say is that Japan has a competitive advantage, and you must safeguard this market domination to the extent possible.